I'm Jeff Hunt. He's Bill Thorpe. It's Friday.
Ready for the weekend?
It's going to be nice this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
45. Maybe some snow showers up in the mountains, but should be pretty mild down here. 43 on Sunday. So
I'm hoping
enjoy the sunshine.
I'm really hoping it hits 45 because then I can pull the car out of the garage and wash it. I got to get the crap from the
from this last.
Yeah, and here's part of the problem. I have to. This is something that is much more important for my old car than for other cars. Is my car, unfortunately, is 1 year before the manufacturer started galvanizing the quarter panels, which means it does not resist the chemicals that we put onto the road. So after they drop all that salt and other gunk in there, if I leave it on the car, it's going to rust out. So, and there isn't a speck of rust on this car. So I am not about to let that happen. So I'm really hoping that we get to 45 because then I can rinse all the crap off the metal. I got to do that. So I'm hoping. Fingers crossed for 45 because I can't do it below 45 because then it hurts the paint.
Well, big decision coming out yesterday, or at least a settlement when it comes to Colorado schools. We're going to talk with Chris Murray with First and 14th Law coming up. But now it's time for the news.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Happy Friday, 28, and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 41 today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
She's a sweetheart. Super kind, super sweet, always driven, super family-oriented, loves her friends and family, spends a lot of time with them.
That's a friend of 20-year-old Kaylee Russell. Russell vanished Sunday near the Loveland Johnstown Park and Ride, and she has been found dead. Search crews located an overturned vehicle in a waterway north of Timnath Reservoir that matched the description of her car, though investigators have not released the details about the cause of death.
It is so sad. I don't know if you follow these. There's some guys on like YouTube have entire channels where they will scuba dive in like lakes and reservoirs and waterways around major roads. And there's sometimes like 20 cars out there.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is wild. Wow. Going back to like the 1970s, and they'll go down and there'll still be bodies in there, and they'll identify them using the license plates and all this stuff. But yeah, there's a whole little cottage industry of guys that have popped up that go around and scuba dive in waterways and find these cars. You have no idea how many people have just driven off the road into this stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, and then all the missing people. And
yeah, exactly.
You have no idea. Wow. All right, the Jeffco Sheriff's Office says a sergeant assigned to the SWAT team has resigned after he reported to a crime scene intoxicated, and that crime scene was at Evergreen High School in September during the shooting. Sergeant Anthony Hamilton was intoxicated when he arrived at the scene, at the deadly scene, as we know, on September 10th. The sheriff's office said Hamilton was placed on leave while an investigation was conducted. Hamilton reportedly chose to resign rather than being fired. All right, pipe bombs.
I'm sorry, you
FBI
don't.
agent.
You don't get to do that.
Yeah.
You don't get to resign.
Yeah, I agree.
When you showed up to a school shooting as a member of the SWAT team drunk?
Yep. Yeah,
What?
I don't think you should have that option.
Exactly. No, that needs to follow you around for the rest of your career. And this wasn't just like, I had one or two beers because it was my day off, and I forgot I was on call. 9 beers.
9 beers. Wow. Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, this shouldn't be. You're right. I mean, it should be fired, and that's it. I don't know.
Exactly, and that should follow you around everywhere else. You got to do something else with the rest of your life. You can't be a law enforcement officer somewhere else.
Right. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid of firing him and not allowing the resignation?
What is going on there?
Yep, it's crazy. All right, to the pipe bombs.
Police arrested 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr. in his Woodbridge home yesterday. Authorities say Cole placed 2 pipe bombs outside RNC and DNC headquarters on January 5th. Court records show Cole lived in the home on Manor House Court and worked as a bail bondsman in Northern Virginia. He also graduated from Hilton High School in 2013. The FBI says he purchased the bomb-making materials from stores in Northern Virginia, including Home Depot and Lowe's. Investigators had been trying to find a suspect for years and say they'll continue working to figure out a motive. I'm Rosia Rivera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the American people are going to go for this one. I'm not sure. Let's see, the Supreme Court allowing Texas to use a new congressional map that would benefit Republicans in next year's midterm election. A lower court ruling said the map was unlawful. Of course they did. And this one just coming over, unless this is a day old, but a grand jury has declined to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James after being asked to look into the mortgage fraud claims, of course, from Big Tish. So it says a grand jury has declined to indict her. That is the problem that we have right now. And 3-star General Hugo Carvajal Barrios from Venezuela, former head of intelligence, has been jailed in federal prison for months. He wrote a letter to the president and the American people alleging that there was a state-backed drug smuggling operation going on the past 20 years in Venezuela. 200 tons of cocaine being brought in. They brought in migrants, diplomats who were bribed, including some CIA and U.S. diplomats, and gained access to our military bases and allowed Russia to connect to one of our undersea communication cables so they could spy on us the past decade. Admitted that they emptied prisons so Tren de Aragua could cause hell in the States, including here in Aurora. Imported the gangs, that was a mess, and through Smartmatic manipulated voting machines exported globally. So within days or the next week, possibly DJT and the U.S. may be going in to finish off Nicolas Maduro. Anything is possible. Just crazy. Unbelievable. I can't say that any of us are surprised at any of that. An appeals court is allowing National Guard troops to remain in D.C. On Thursday, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals lifted an injunction requiring the troops to leave by December 11th. And the national Christmas tree is lit up and in front of the White House. 35-foot spruce tree. The annual holiday tradition goes back to 1923. The Lions beat the Cowboys 44-30 last night, and the Broncos continue to prepare for the Raiders. They've got to take care of the Raiders coming up this weekend. Maybe they can get that number 1 seed. We'll see. Patriots thinking they can do it. Big game coming up this weekend. Islanders beat the Avalanche last night 6-3. Nuggets in Atlanta tonight 5:30 tip. 27 in Brighton, 24 in Castle Rock, 28 in Denver. You're waking up with Jeff and Bill, and I'm Blake Olson. TGIF News Talk 710 KNUS.
Be on the lookout for some limited visibility in areas of fog to get your day started. After the fog burns off, becoming mostly sunny, highs mid to upper 30s. Fair tonight, teens and 20s. Mostly to partly cloudy, upper 30s to near 40 on Friday, near the mid-20s Friday night. Mostly to partly cloudy Saturday. During the course of the day Saturday, there will be a chance of snow showers, as tonight, Friday, and Saturday, there will be snow in Colorado's mountains, with a few snow showers reaching the plains. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Headline from our friends at Rocky Mountain Voice: Colorado schools win landmark settlement protecting female athletes. From Jen Schumann. in a move that reshapes how school athletics operates across the state. School District 49 and 7 partner districts have secured a landmark settlement with the Colorado High School Activities Association, known as CHASA. The agreement formally protects biological sex policies for sports, locker rooms, and overnight travel, and it removes CHASA from the center of Colorado's most charged debate over fairness, privacy, and Title IX. The December 4th settlement also allows the districts to continue full participation in sanctioned activities without penalty. District 49 describes the outcome as a decisive step in restoring equal opportunity for girls and strengthening the role of local school boards in setting policy. CHASA deserves credit for doing the right thing, said the superintendent in a statement on Thursday. By reaching this agreement, they've recognized the need to protect fairness and competition and privacy in school facilities for our female athletes. We appreciate their willingness to engage in thoughtful dialogue and reach a resolution that puts students first. The district said the settlement marks the first significant development in the broader case still moving through federal court, and shows its continued commitment to student safety and equal opportunity. Well, he's part of the legal team that secured this landmark settlement. Joining us now, Chris Murray with First and 14th Law. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for your time this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, no, good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Bill. How are you guys?
Well, it sounds like a big day, particularly for fairness, for privacy in the state of Colorado. Tell us what this case was all about.
Yeah, well, first thing, the case is still ongoing. So there's a portion of the case against the state Civil Rights Commission and Attorney General Weiser that's going to be in a hearing on Monday. But the big thing about this settlement is that CHASA has agreed to sort of get out of the middle of this and say, you know what, if schools want to adopt policies that protect girls by requiring participation in sports on the basis of biological sex, we're not going to penalize them if they adopt those policies. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for doing that.
Because this was a serious issue, dividing a lot of districts. I imagine you had more progressive districts that are going, it's all right, we'll intermingle men and women and in different sports. It's not a big deal to us. But then you had more conservative, probably rural districts that are like, no, this is unfair. We're not going to do it. And that created a difference in CHASA finding itself in the midst of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know, actually, as a number of districts, I wouldn't be surprised if now that this settlement has happened, if you see a lot of the smaller districts, the rural districts that probably said, geez, the cost of getting sued, the cost of dealing with CHASA on this would just be, too astronomical. So we're just going to sit quiet and hope this issue doesn't find us. I would not be surprised to see a lot of districts across the state adopting policies similar to the policies adopted by D49, D20, and D11 down in Colorado Springs. And by the way, those districts, those are all massive districts at the north end of El Paso County.
Wow. Look, this is something that we asked the newly elected school board of Douglas County about during the campaigns, and they said, well, we don't want to use county resources to fight this, so we'll just kind of allow, whatever happens to happen. It's kind of like a rollover type of approach to this. I'm proud of these districts for standing up for women's sports. This seems like a no-brainer to me. Why women would lose out on athletic opportunities, scholarship opportunities, because some dude just decides he wants to now participate in the sport. That's unfair, and every district should stand up for it, in my opinion. What do you think, Chris?
No, look, I agree. But at the end of the day, right, this settlement, it's sad, but let's be honest. There's going to be some progressive districts that say, no, we actually love biological boys participating in girls' sports. If a biological boy is the best girl, then so be it. He's going to get the title, right? And I think CHASA, by saying, look, whatever your district policy is, we're going to honor that, and we're not going to punish you one way or the other for choosing to have a policy that protects biological girls or doesn't. That's all CHASA can do right now, given the state of the law. And again, I think they've done the right thing to sort of get back to doing what they do best, which is run, state championships and state athletic competitions, and let these districts continue to fight it out with the state civil rights division to see who's going to win in the long run.
All right, so help me walk through a very specific example. By the way, we're talking with Chris Murray, First and 14th Law. Let's say a 6'5" dude with a beard from Boulder named Rick decides he wants to play in women's volleyball and they go down to D49. Rick is slamming the ball everywhere. They're state champions. This guy is the number one female volleyball player in the state, according to Boulder. They show up at D49. What happens?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Here's what happens. D49 will refuse to compete against that team. And D49 will not be sanctioned for refusing to compete against that team. That will count as a forfeit for refusing to compete for now. Because remember, D49 doesn't have any power over Boulder's policies, right? Just like now Boulder doesn't have any power over D49's policies. What would have happened before this settlement is that by refusing to compete, D49 would have opened its teams up to additional sanctions, right? Like being barred from state tournaments, being barred from, different types of extracurriculars. And so all of those additional sanctions for unsportsmanlike conduct have gone away. But to be clear, if Boulder shows up with Rick, the 6'5" bearded female volleyball player, D49's option is to say, you know what, we're going to keep our girls safe by refusing to compete against that team.
And in forfeiting, though, they would technically be a loss, wouldn't it?
Well, correct. That's right. It would technically be a loss, but there's nothing that CHASA can do, right, to change what D49 is doing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What Boulder is doing,
yeah.
Because that's why the rest of the lawsuit against the state is going to continue.
Yeah,
because the only way to get the relief to protect girls and actually say that Boulder can't do that, right, is to win this lawsuit.
That's a big deal because let's say you're an enterprising athletic director who doesn't really care about the social battles. You're like, I just want the victories. And you pack your entire volleyball team with Rick, Larry, and Mark, all over 6 feet tall, and you just run around the state and everybody forfeits. You're de facto state champions, wouldn't you be?
I mean, sure you would, but let's be clear, Jeff. We haven't seen anything like that happen yet in Colorado. I mean, even in Boulder, I don't think we've seen athletic directors saying, "Hey, let me game the system this way." And in other states where there is a routine refusal to compete against these teams, well, there's a reason why the folks on the other side of the debate get mad about those forfeits. They get mad about them because what it really does, Jeff, is it delegitimizes that state championship, right? Everybody knows exactly what happened there. And frankly, that's not even nearly as important as keeping the girls who would have to compete against Rick, Larry, and Mark safe from that. If the price for the time being is, some, I think, frankly, BS forfeits, well, D49, D11, and D20 are willing to pay that price while they try to get the rules changed for everybody.
We're talking with Chris Murray, First and 14th Law. So you mentioned the lawsuit continues, right? Because I do think that whatever – it sounds like it's a state law or policy is wildly unfair. And it absolutely needs to be contested because we need to protect the sanctity and safety of women's sports as well as private locations like locker rooms and bathrooms. This seems like common sense to me. But you have to continue. So this is one important step. But Phil Weiser, more lawsuits? Tell us about this.
Well, no. I mean, so again, D49, D20, D11, and a bunch of other districts and schools brought suit against Attorney General Weiser, the Civil Rights Commission, the State Civil Rights Commission, and CHASA. Right. The CHASA portion of this lawsuit is now done because CHASA has again, to their credit, said, you know what, you're right. we're not gonna enforce our policies that we've put in place to support this state law against districts that adopt policies like D49s. But the rest of the case goes forward to say, hey, look, Title IX requires that you have equal opportunity for women in interscholastic athletics. And it is not equal opportunity for women if their spaces and their competitive opportunities are being gobbled up by men.
That seems pretty straightforward to me. What's the counter argument from the Attorney General, maybe soon to be next governor of Colorado?
Well, this is sort of telling, right? There really hasn't been a substantive counter argument. The only argument they've made is essentially that, it's a bunch of technical arguments, that the Attorney General is immune from suit in federal court for some special reasons, that school districts as political subdivisions of the state cannot sue the state, even though, by the way, they clearly can when they're suing on behalf of people in their charge, like students, right? The 1960s civil rights cases dealt with all of this. And so they haven't made a legal or a moral defense of this law. They're trying to avoid the day in court. And that's actually what the hearing on Monday is going to be about, just their motions to dismiss on technical grounds.
That's Chris Murray with First and 14th Law. Can we talk about damages that have been done? Do you have examples? Have there been laid out examples of women that have lost out on opportunities or districts that have been harmed as a result of wanting to stand for separate sports?
Well, so there are some examples that are in papers that we filed with the court, but you have to recognize that these policies that have been adopted by D49, D20, and D11, they were only adopted earlier this year, and they were adopted in response to an amendment to the Civil Rights Act in Colorado, and also in response to some executive orders from President Trump recognizing this violation of Title IX, right? When President Trump issued executive orders saying, hey, look, like men don't belong in women's sports, and that's a violation of Title IX, these school districts stood up and said, hey, recent amendments to the Civil Rights Act in Colorado that grants special status to individuals on the basis of transgender identity or transgender status, right, to seek places in the spaces of the opposite sex. That looks like President Trump saying that violates Title IX. And you know what? We're going to go ahead and take that legal theory and run with it. So these districts have not been retaliated against yet for this. There hasn't been anything that's happened to them. And again, CHASA has done the right thing by saying, hey, we're going to let this play out. What they're trying to do is get their day in court before a complaint gets brought to the Civil Rights Commission saying, let Larry onto the girls' volleyball team at Monument High School.
And I understand that as kind of being preemptive of some serious harm that would take place. I guess I run into this oftentimes. Comments come in, especially on social media. Well, the trans man in women's sports issue isn't really that big of a deal. How many women have really lost out on scholarships? Aren't we just being more compassionate by allowing these guys to compete? It's not like they're real champions. They're just kind of out there, but it's not a real problem for women. What's your response to people that make that argument, Chris?
Yeah, my response to that is it is a real issue. And I mean, we see it happening all over the country. And I would say to them, look, I don't think it's particularly compassionate for a school district to put its head in the sand and wait until a transgender student, a boy identifying as a girl or a girl identifying as a boy for that matter, comes along and says, hey, you guys don't have a policy on this. State law says that I get to do this. And so I'm going to rely on that. I want a chance to compete, right? Well, then you pass the policy and then you deal with it, right, on that high school student's time when they've only got 3 or 4 years to compete. That doesn't sound very compassionate to me. I think it's better to make the rules clear right up front so anybody who's going to, for example, a D49 school knows, hey, the rules are the rules that they were yesterday. To play in girls' sports, you have to actually be a girl.
That's Chris Murray with First and 14th Law joining Jeff and Bill live. I want to go kind of outside the current discussion just a little bit, Chris. And,
of course you do, Bill.
Yeah, of course. And I want to have your impression on this one. With this rule, looking at, if D49 wins this or state rules in Colorado, what I want to look at is how does this possibly impact intramural sports at schools? This is more of a college question than a high school question because at college we see more co-ed intramural sports. Do possible rules that could be drawn up to not allow women to participate or men to participate, trans women to participate in women's sports and the like, could that potentially create problems for co-ed intramural sports that already exist, or would they be given a possible exemption? And where I'm going with this is if they're giving an exemption to possible co-ed intramural sports, is it necessarily a danger?
Yeah, so I actually don't think co-ed sports need any kind of an exemption because, the exemption's right there. It's in the name of the sport. Any sport that's already co-ed, right, where both sexes compete against each other, right, and commingle, well, then I think this is a complete non-issue for those sports, right? Under what Title IX talks about, and Title IX doesn't really apply that much to intramural sports opportunities, but Title IX just says to the extent that you have exclusive opportunities for men, right, which is where college athletics and high school athletics started, back in the, if you want to call them that, the bad old days where it was just, mainly hey, we've got men's basketball, football, and baseball teams, and, the girls can be cheerleaders, right? Well, Title IX was intended to remedy that and say, whoa. Those sports are all fine, but you've got to give equal opportunity to girls, too. In exclusively girls' sports. So I think co-ed sports, there's no problem there under Title IX, and I think common sense would say, well, if both genders can compete there, then it doesn't really matter so much, at least in terms of the competition, right, what your gender expression is. Now, I would say to the extent that there are locker room facilities, right, or travel arrangements for those sports where there's still single-sex locker rooms, then a win here might protect the opportunity to maintain those spaces, the changing spaces and that type of stuff, single-sex, even in co-ed sports.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because that's what I figured was going to be how it'd fall down, is the fact that the sports that are, basically the competition sports inside of the schools have already been defined based on their exclusivity, that they weren't started as having both groups involved, and so then that exclusivity would take priority. I'm going to clarify that. I want to make sure that I was seeing that right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Chris Murray with First and 14th Law. Now, the United Nations has found in its own study, in the Violence Against Women and Girls Sports study, that over 600 female athletes in more than 400 women's divisions events across 29 different sports have been defeated by transgender identifying males, resulting in over 890 medals being taken from female athletes. So you often run up against this. I see it all the time. Well, this isn't really happening. Come on. No, I mean, that's a serious amount of impact on women's sports. And even if it happened one time, this is something I've never understood, watching parents on the sidelines, watching their daughters get beat by a dude. If that happened to my child one time, I'd be upset about it because it's just simply not fair. Then you get into locker rooms and privacy. How does the decision yesterday affect locker rooms and the privacy of spaces for women?
Well, then this CHASA has said that CHASA is going to permit the plaintiff districts here to maintain their policies, which the policies that were adopted said, look, locker rooms, changing spaces, travel arrangements, right, like hotel rooms, all those spaces are going to be maintained for the separate genders, and access to them will be determined on the basis of one's biological sex, right? Not what their expressed gender identity is. So this means that in D49, D20, D11, the other plaintiff schools, right, the girls' locker room is for girls, and if there's a boy in there, he's breaking the rules. And same thing, boys' locker room is for boys. And if there's a girl in there, she's breaking the rules.
Here's the weirdness that Colorado's going to find itself in, because I don't think that Phil Weiser can defend
Hold on,
the
Jeff,
current
I'm
process.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Weirdness that we'll find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Like we're there, man.
I know exactly. No, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna lay this out for you. Okay, Phil Weiser's not going to be able to defend his current policies, and so they're going to have to go look statewide. Men versus men, girls versus girls. It's just common sense. There's clear biological differences. We just have to do it. We're going through this kind of moment. So the state will clarify its position on that. And then voters will elect Brianna Titone to state treasurer. And Brianna's going to run around going that she's a female. He is a female elected to state treasurer. So you're going to end up with a very weird state that Colorado will be in, recognizing Brianna Titone as a woman elected to state treasurer when she is a biological he. And at the same time, they'll have to clarify that only men can compete in men's sports and women will compete in women's sports.
Yeah,
but, if they were logical, they'd be conservatives to begin with. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no. Look, you're right, Jeff. This is all just so utterly bizarre, right? I will say this, for your maybe like 15 moderate listeners, I'll say this, that I don't personally agree with this, but there is a logical argument to be made. I think it falls apart on just the absurdity of trying to draw these distinctions. But there is an argument to be made that, hey, look, if a grown man wants to go around pretending that he's a woman, right, but he's not intruding on female spaces, right, and the worst thing that he does is wear the opposite gender's clothes and pretend that, hey, his election to treasurer, for example, is a victory for women in Colorado, that you can live with that a lot easier than you can live with the very real and unavoidable impacts of the sex differences between athletic competitors, right? Because when the rubber meets the road there in the arena of athletic competition, right, or in private spaces, that's where you just can't. Courtesy has to give way to real life.
I agree. Well, Chris Murray, First and 14th, great victory yesterday. Colorado schools winning a landmark settlement protecting female athletes. I hope this is momentum in the right direction. Phil Weiser can't get anything right, but maybe he'll get this thing right. But great work. Be sure to thank all the school districts that were a part of this, who have now been able to empower a lot of other school districts around the state to be able to make this policy and not have to face a lot of unfair consequences from the state. Chris Murray, First and 14th. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, totally. My pleasure, fellas. Take care.
All right, let's talk Black Eyed Pea of Colorado, locally owned and run by Stephen Michelle. I love this restaurant. My whole family does, with 8 locations. There's sure to be one near you. This week, make it a point to take your family out to eat at the Black Eyed Pea restaurant. Everything's made from scratch. Some home-style favorites: mile-high meatloaf, glazed ham steak, slow-cooked pot roast, all served with 2 sides and their signature fresh baked rolls. They have great burgers and sandwiches. They have fresh seafood. They have homemade soups and tasty salads. They've got daily specials and senior discounts. The Black Eyed Pea has what you're hungry for. This has become a post-church meal favorite for our family. So go to church, head out to the Black Eyed Pea. The entire family will love it. Your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, or company event will be a success with Black Eyed Pea Catering, and Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always perfect. So for your spouse, birthday favors, or holiday presents, or as a thank you to someone special, be sure to get them a gift card. I love everything about this restaurant. I know you will as well. Keep it in Colorado. Visit the Black Eyed Pea near you. BlackEyedPeaColorado.com. Black Eyed Pea Colorado.com. What do you think of this settlement? It's CHASA right to go, look, we're not going to punish schools that decide they want to forfeit when a biological male claims to want to compete in a women's sports, and that other district allows it to happen. They're not going to punish the quote-unquote more conservative school districts. Is this a win for sanity? Or Is it a loss of tolerance? Look, we need to tolerate and love and respect people that are trans-identifying and they want to compete in sports. Who are we to take away the opportunities from them? Allow them to compete in the sport in which they identify. Give us a call and join the conversation. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Headline coming from our friends at Rocky Mountain Voice. Colorado schools win landmark settlement protecting female athletes. CHASA backing out of a lawsuit against the state regarding men competing in women's sports, men in women's locker rooms, and overnight travel with regards to grade school, high school. So this doesn't get to college. This has to do with K through 12 here in Colorado. Faith, the history teacher, texted in saying, my best friend is a commissioner for CHASA. I promise you this is a victory for them. They don't want to deal with any of this. The stuff they have to handle between districts as it relates to the difference in values on a day-to-day basis is unbelievable. Taking this off their plate is probably a huge relief for all their commissioners. I disagree, Faith, and here's why. This state loves to be progressive. Oh, boy, do they love to be progressive. 30,000 showing up for Bernie Sanders AOC rallies on almost rallies and protests on almost a weekly basis. Anti-ICE rallies, no Kings rallies. Man, they not only like to be progressive, they like to tell the whole world how progressive they are until they run up into the brick wall of reality, which is that when men compete in women's sports, it's unfair for women. And so CHASA backing off on this is coming to terms with reality. Because I think they would love to tout how progressive and forward-thinking they are in the world. But there's real harm being done to women that needs to be confronted. Now, the question I have is, what is Phil Weiser going to do? Phil Weiser, who loves to send me fundraising emails on the latest lawsuit with Donald Trump, running for governor in a deep blue state, now has to face this reality. Bill, what do you think Phil Weiser does?
Well, a couple of things. One, with what Fran, the history teacher, was saying, or Faith, the history teacher, was saying, I'd be curious to see whether or not her friend that is on that commission is a super lib, as you have described them as. So that'd be my first question.
At this point, they're all super libs. Bill, they're everywhere.
Hang on a sec. It may be super lib compared on where you're sitting on the political spectrum.
Reality?
No, not at all. I mean, it's reality where you are, but there are a lot of people that are left. It doesn't mean that they're all super left from you, but that's okay. So I would be curious, and you seem to read into that something that Faith didn't include inside of her text message. So I would be curious from Faith if she would describe that best friend as someone that is super liberal and out there advocating for a whole bunch of trans rights. Is that really the direction that people that are on that commission are going? The question about Weiser, I think, is much more interesting, personally. In fact, I would like to convene the very special Jeff and Bill Show Phil Weiser Advisory for Governor meeting right now. That we could I know he's not going to take any of our advice, and he probably shouldn't. But if we were going to, Jeff, put together a strategy meeting for Phil Weiser, this is a very, very particularly difficult minefield, in my opinion, for him to navigate. First, because of, does he stay true to the more liberal ideas of the inclusion and they've got a right to play and everything that you have outlined? Or does he acknowledge the reality that he is very likely to lose this case and he wants to run for governor? He's already thrown his hat in the ring. Does he want this? And because of this being a conversation and an issue that is going to get lots of eyeballs, does he want this public of a loss running into his campaign? If he is going to be the guy that is out there fighting for, truth, justice, the American way, and he's the one that is vanquishing the orange menace from our state and blah, 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 all this other stuff he's going to do, does he want a loss on a case this large on this issue as he's running? I would advise him to step away from it. I would say this is this is a landmine. Get away.
Bill,
get away, because there's no way.
They lose all the time in the courts. They lose when it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court. How many times has Jack Phillip had to win? And there's zero political consequence in the state.
But hang on a sec. That's not all Phil Weiser that has lost those cases.
But Jared Polis didn't pay a political. I know, but Democrats haven't paid a single political price for losing on this stuff.
I disagree on that one. And I think that running into the election, he doesn't want a loss that is this public on this kind of an issue. I think things on the scale of Donald Trump is a little bit different because there you look at him being some sort of a renegade and a freedom fighter and he's doing his best and blah, blah, blah. This is a little bit different. That's why I think that I'm not certain this is a minefield. I would advise him to continue on because there are going to be some persuadable voters that are going to disagree with him defending this issue, and he's going to need all the votes that he can get. And that's the idea, is he has to appeal. Remember that the unaffiliateds are the largest voting bloc in Colorado.
But Bill, you're far too rational in this case. And what you're going to see, because you don't see, look, right now the policy exists that men can compete in women's sports. Where are the Highlands Ranch moms going, hold on, look at the school board down in Douglas County that just went crazy woke.
Well, question
right?
for
That's
this,
not going to fight this issue at all.
Do you think
you don't see them anywhere?
Inside of the unaffiliateds in Colorado, I know that they're amorphous. They're not necessarily affiliated politically.
They're all libs.
Well, hang on. What you think they all are? So what percentage of
99.9% of unaffiliateds are libs.
Then I disagree with that because
total libs.
Well, the issue is that we have callers that are here that say oftentimes they left the Republican Party and are now unaffiliated.
And they are libs. They probably voted for Kamala.
Again, it doesn't make them libs because they left the Republican Party and then became unaffiliated.
I think that's the definition of it.
No, not at all. That's not the definition of it at all. What percentage of the unaffiliated voters in Colorado do you think would support putting trans female athletes into women's sports? What percentage? Would you guess?
I don't think they support it. But I think they care more about being seen as kind.
Do they support
it? Like when
it?
you look at that little like in our house thing, the 6 commandments of being woke, the bottom one I think is the most important one because I own my own flag. I actually paid for it. But it says in this house, no human is illegal.
Yeah.
The bottom one is kindness is everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think they actually support it. I just think they'll never fight it.
So wait,
hang
on a sec. I got a question
because
for
they
you.
want to be seen as kind.
Is kindness a liberal value then?
In their definition, which is tolerance, that's the way they see it. So it's like a notion.
Tolerance. I disagree.
Yeah, I think
kindness isn't tolerance.
Well, in their mind, 100% is.
No,
yes, they tolerate everything. They'll never stand up against anyone other than Donald Trump.
No, they've stood up for a lot of different things. But the idea is,
like for instance, they may disagree with gay marriage, but they'll never say that marriage is between one man and one woman because that's not kind. So that becomes
that'd be necessarily possibly about personal freedom, but that'd be different. That'd be a different argument. But the idea is, and the idea of kindness, I disagree that kindness is a liberal value and exclusionary, and that's where you're going with it. And I disagree that 90% or so of the unaffiliateds are liberals, and I don't think that you could get more than 50% of unaffiliateds to vote for putting trans females into women's sports.
They don't have to vote for it. They just don't have to fight against it.
Hang on a sec. There's a point there. And I don't think you could get more than, I'd be surprised if you can get more than 35% of that cohort to vote for it. And that's important because if Phil Weiser is going to fight that fight, if the voter doesn't agree with that fight being necessary or worth it, then that's an issue. And it's going to look bad on him. That's why he has to consider where the unaffiliateds are in this state. And I think fighting this fight is going to be bad because he's going to lose. And it's going to be very public. This will get much more eyeballs and much more traction and much more conversations around the water cooler and the Zoom meetings than any other major case he's involved in.
Bill, you and I, again, just disagree on this.
Yes, we do.
I think you could be as progressive as you want, lose all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court multiple times, and the voters of Colorado will go, but are you kind? And is there a government program that can provide that kindness for us? All right, we'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Boy, I kicked off those text messages hot by calling all the unaffiliates libs. Be a Republican. Come on, join the team. If you're conservative, don't just be unaffiliated. But Julie in Denver with a great point. I am unaffiliated, but I know the difference between kindness and suicidal empathy. And my whole point being that, yeah, they may not agree with men competing in women's sports, the moms of Highlands Ranch, but they're never going to say so. They haven't been saying so because kindness really matters, how they're perceived. I mean, if you're really mad about men competing in women's sports, where are they right now? The law currently exists. We have that issue in Colorado. I don't see them. And they continue to elect Democrats. And they'll probably elect Breonna Tattone and go, we elected a woman to the state treasurer.
Could it be something to do possibly with the level of harm that they are seeing or not seeing necessarily, that maybe things that are existing inside of their life, the idea of a trans female inside of sports, of which we don't have a heck of a lot, isn't going to rise up in their lives to the top level of something they need to get out there and protest. There may be things like
Bill,
property tax and other things that might be more important.
That's why they won't care if Phil Weiser fights for it. They'll
no,
go,
that's why
there's other things.
No, that's why it would hurt, because they're like, he's wasting his time fighting this when I need this X, Y, and Z fixed in my life. But he's focused on this. This is the thing that he thinks is most important to go to court over. This thing, not fixing all the other crap that I'm dealing with in my life. That's why it's important.
Crime's worse. It's more expensive in the state, and they continue to vote him in.
And Phil Weiser goes and fights this fight. That's my point. That's exactly my point.
The debate will continue. You're invited to be a part of it. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader. We're at 710 KNUS. We'll be right back.